every crime, a story of a survivor, of someone left behind, of someone determined to solve a mystery. These are the stories of crimes that changed lives forever. This is Justice Rules.
A 13-year-old girl in her front yard in Lumberton, North Carolina, when a man forced her into her family's SUV and drove off. Police issued an Amber Alert, and for weeks a community pleaded for answers. What happened to Hania Aguilar? Finally, they made a gruesome discovery and then an arrest. But this story is far from over. Reporter Mark Becker takes us through the quest to find justice for Hania.
Perched on the edge of North Carolina's coastal plains, Lumberton has the soul of a small town and the feel of an old friend. But just beneath the surface, this community lives with a troubling reality. It's in a county with the highest violent crime rate in North Carolina, and fear is a shadow never far off. So when 13-year-old Hania Aguilar disappeared outside her home early on the morning of November 5th, 2018, this community collectively held its breath.
First, you don't know, maybe it was some disgruntled, family member. It's just going to be a little fleeting, passing thing. And
Jerome Chavis was born and raised in Lumberton, and early on he could sense that something was terribly wrong. Within hours, Lumberton police issued an Amber Alert and called in the FBI. The next day, Hania's mother made a public plea for her return.
Devuélveme a mi hija, la necesito. Estoy sufriendo por ella, sus hermanas también.
I think it's a big story from the beginning. I mean, you had the very first thing we heard, 13-year-old girl snatched, trying to go to school.
Donnie Douglas is the longtime editor of the local newspaper here, the Robisonian.
You got a sense fairly early on that something bad had happened to her.
These things don't ever end good. I mean, they just kind of don't.
And still for the next several days, this community tried to hold on to hope. The FBI offered a reward up to $15,000 for information that would help them find Hania. And they released surveillance video of a stolen SUV seen speeding away moments after Hania disappeared. They wouldn't have to wait long. The next day, agents found that SUV abandoned in the scrub off a country road. But there was still no sign of Hania, so they roped the area off and searched for clues that would help them find her. Later that day, another big development. The FBI released surveillance video of a man seen walking near the place where Hania had disappeared. The first images of a possible suspect in the case. They showed a man dressed in dark clothing, wearing a bandana, the same description witnesses had reported seeing the day she disappeared. It may have been their first look at a killer, and they needed the community to put a face and a name to that shadowy figure. But there was still no sign of Hania, and hope was fading in Lumberton that they would find her alive.
yeah, as time progressed, we figured there wasn't going to be a good ending. Sadly, we were right.
All the while, calls have been coming into the Lumberton Police Department's tip line. It was one of those calls that finally led them here on November 27th to an area several miles from where Hania had disappeared.
We started specifically targeting the area along Wiregrass Road because of a number of tips that have come into the police department through the tip line.
Police and the FBI roped off the area and searched well into the night. The next day, they made an announcement that many had expected, but no one wanted to hear.
We believe we had found the body of 13-year-old Hania Aguilar. The body was found in a body of water off the Wiregrass Road in Robeson County about 4:45 p.m. yesterday afternoon.
The police chief and FBI's lead agent wrestled with their own emotions as they faced reporters.
Last night, I had to stand in front of Hania's mother and explain to her what we had found. And you can all imagine what that has done to her.
This is the outcome that we all feared that was going to happen. We did not want to hear this. We wanted to bring Hania back home and bring her back home alive to our community. it hurts.
3 weeks of searching and hoping had clearly taken their toll. They vowed their search would continue, but now with a different focus.
Our work is not over. We will not stop. We will not stop until we find the person or persons responsible and we bring them to justice. We will not stop.
This here isn't about us today. This is about an innocent girl. It's about Hania and her life. And we want to do everything possible to hold the person or persons accountable who committed this horrific offense.
And as Hania's family grieved, the community grieved with them.
I just feel sorry for her mother. I couldn't imagine going through something like that.
It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. I just can't imagine what that mother's going through with.
On December 8th, a month and 3 days after she disappeared, more than 1,000 people gathered in Lumberton for Hania Aguilar's funeral. It was a bittersweet celebration of a life that had ended much too soon.
Every day I am reminded that her life's journey is really about the people who she has touched.
The same day that this community said goodbye to Hania, the FBI announced that police had made an arrest in the case, a suspect they'd been looking at for several weeks, a suspect already in jail here on unrelated charges. Police had identified 34-year-old Michael McClellan as a possible suspect soon after Hania disappeared. He has family members who live near Hania's home, and he looks like the shadowy figure walking in that surveillance video. But it was DNA agents found in that stolen SUV that finally gave them what they needed to charge him with Hana's kidnapping, rape, and murder. DNA that also tied McClellan to a break-in and rape 2 years earlier in another part of Robeson County. And then another troubling twist. The district attorney revealed that a detective in the Robeson County Sheriff's Office had had that DNA evidence a year earlier and failed to follow up. Many in Robeson County were outraged.
He had the evidence to arrest this guy. And had he been arrested, he'd been in jail. Hania she'd be alive, no question. It infuriates me that our tax dollars that we pay, we don't mind paying, didn't protect this child.
I understand that people want to go there and they want to point fingers and they want to place blame.
But newspaper editor Donnie Douglas says even if McClellan had been arrested for that rape, in a county with a huge backlog of criminal cases, there's a good chance that he would have been out of jail on bond.
So if this guy had been arrested and charged with that rape in Fairmont in 2016, do we know that he wouldn't have done the same thing? We don't know. But yeah, it looks really bad.
And through it all, this community is trying to heal.
They've collected you some money, and they want to bring it to you, and I'll get with you. They've got you some cash. So.
Jerome Chavis has formed a special bond with Hania's family, and a local company has given them a new home. But the hurt is still there where hope had been, and only time can heal that.
I think we'll eventually recover. It won't be overnight. It won't be next week, next month, next year. It's going to take some time. Everybody's hurt. Everybody in the county. Everybody's hurt.
Michael McClellan has a long criminal history. The DNA that police say connects him to Hania's murder and the 2016 rape case was collected from the federal database back in 2007 after McClellan was convicted of felony assault with a deadly weapon and first-degree burglary. Now he could face the death penalty. A Florida mother appeared on television fighting with her ex-fiancé over an engagement ring. Hours later, she vanished.
I just seriously think somebody's got her.
The new piece of evidence police just found that could finally lead them to her killer.
They literally just found a needle in a haystack.
2 women murdered, at least 3 others attacked and raped, and DNA all points to the same man.
This guy's a bad guy, and he's out there taking people off the streets. He needs to be somebody that we take off the street.
The new technology now being used to try and track him down. It is a brutal case in Brockton, Massachusetts. 2 women found murdered, and the killer's DNA linked him to the violent rapes of 3 more victims. Reporter Bob Ward shows us how DNA technology and genealogy are being used to try to get this killer off the streets.
A sweetheart. She walked into a room, she lit it up.
Mark Milet helped raise his granddaughter, Ashley Milet. He remembers Ashley as an energetic, fun-loving child.
If love could have saved her, she would have nothing ever would have happened to her.
But Ashley Milet is at the center of a gruesome unsolved homicide case that's now going high-tech. In December 2014, Ashley's dismembered body was found in woods near Brockton's VFW. Discovered near Ashley, the badly decomposed body of a second victim, later identified as 50-year-old Linda Schufeld. Both Ashley and Linda had fallen victim to drug abuse and had been arrested for prostitution. But this disturbing case does not end there.
They're targeting the weak, they're targeting the vulnerable, and therefore it's more important than ever that we make sure that people understand we're not going to idly sit by when that occurs.
The killer's DNA collected from Ashley's body matched DNA recovered from 3 violent rapes of prostitutes in Brockton. All 5 victims worked the same city streets. And now the killer's DNA is emerging as powerful evidence.
This guy's a bad guy, and he's out there taking people off the streets. He needs to be somebody that we take off the street.
Virginia-based Parabon Nanolabs already produced a digital composite image of the killer from his own DNA. But investigators are hoping for more.
But now you're trying to use the same DNA to give you something else. What are you trying to do?
We're trying to get additional information that we can open up new leads. That's what we're looking for. We're hopeful that we're going to be able, by using the genetic genealogy, find somebody who may be related to the individual that committed this offense.
Genetic genealogy has turned out to be extraordinarily powerful for law enforcement.
Dr. Ellen Graytack of Parabon Nanolabs explains the Brockton suspect's DNA is being compared to DNA in GEDmatch, a public DNA database open to law enforcement. Armed with matches, Parabon is constructing the suspect's family tree, trying to zero in on a close relative and ultimately the suspect himself. It's a brand new use of DNA technology that's led to the highly publicized arrest of the Golden State Killer in California.
In these cases, we're at least able to give the police something new, some new way to look at the results. And so what we're able to do is give them what we think of as concrete recommendations.
For Ashley's family, there is the hope that this new technology will finally lead to justice.
You know, I'm not like living it again right now, but at least I feel that something's being done.
If you have any information about this case, you are urged to contact the Massachusetts State Police at 508-894-2584. A young mother missing. Police think her ex-fiance is responsible, but they can't prove it.
In my heart, I know she's out there somewhere, and we need her. We need to find her.
Her family's continued efforts to finally bring her justice. A father murdered, the killer still on the loose, and the motive remains a mystery.
It was not carjacking, it wasn't a robbery.
But a decade later, there is new hope, the new witness who could help finally bring justice to a grieving family. In 2011, just after she appeared as a guest on a popular TV show. Her ex-fiance is the only suspect, but after 7 years, police have no evidence to arrest him. And as reporter Shannon Butler explains, police are really no closer to figuring out what happened to Michelle Parker than the day she first disappeared.
On November 17th, 2011, this episode of People's Court hit the air. It featured a young former Florida couple and their problem.
And then he said that he wanted his ring. So I took it off and I threw it at him.
Michelle Parker and Dale Smith were fighting over an engagement ring.
It's been a hell of a roller coaster ride, and it's poison, and we're done.
He sued after he asked for his ring back, but she threw it at him.
She threw the ring, and it bounced over the railing and down 9 floors.
The ring was gone for good. The judge ruled that each should pay half of the $5,000 the ring was worth. Then, hours after the show aired, Parker disappeared. Parker dropped the twins that she shared with Smith off with him around 3:30 p.m. that day. Nobody could reach her after that. Brother Dustin said he sent Parker a text about 4:30 asking where she was. A text back from her phone number had just one word: Waterford. Waterford Lakes is an area east of downtown Orlando. Police and her family wondered, was that a clue from her, or was that someone trying to throw them off? She never showed up for work that night, and her family reported her missing. Searches for the woman began, and Parker's mother begged for her safe return.
She is alive. She is somewhere scared. Somebody has her, and we forgive you. Turn her loose.
Then a break in the case. The next day, the car Parker was driving was found near an Orlando mall. The black Hummer gave police no clues to the 33-year-old's whereabouts. For weeks, volunteers, her family, and law enforcement searched waterways, fields, and storage sites, still holding out hope.
I just seriously think somebody's got her. I just can't help but think that.
Then just after Thanksgiving, police served a search warrant at Smith's parents' home. Smith said he had gone to that house after Parker dropped off the kids with him on November 17th. The next day, the Orlando police chief called Smith the only suspect in her disappearance. And the woman who once believed Smith wouldn't hurt her daughter had to face reality that police believed he knew something.
In my heart, I know she's out there somewhere, and we need her. We need to find her. We still need searchers. We still need the flyers. And this is a sad day, really, but I think it was inevitable.
Smith had been cooperating with police in the early hours of Parker's disappearance, even let them inside his home, but that was the end of his help. Police say he refused to take a polygraph test, and Smith would not answer questions for reporters.
You know if you had anything to do with Michelle's disappearance?
Get out of here! Smith had a checkered past. He was convicted of battery in the 1990s, serving 10 days in jail. His second wife, Shannon, died of an accidental drug overdose. In 1996, he joined the U.S. Marine Corps, and he was court-martialed in 2001. Smith was subsequently dishonorably discharged in 2003. More recently, in 2009, Parker attempted to obtain a restraining order against Smith, but the request was denied due to lack of evidence. After that announcement, the Department of Children and Families took the children away from Smith, but just temporarily. The case seemed to run cold, but then the biggest break yet. In December, her cell phone was found in a lake.
They literally just found a needle in a haystack.
Parker's iPhone was discovered by a dive team under a bridge. The site isn't far from the cell phone tower that registered the last ping from Parker's phone. The site was also between the home of her ex-fiancé, Dale Smith, and his parents' house. But since then, nothing. Smith continues to live his life with his twins here in Orlando. He does not allow Parker's family visitation. Her family knows they won't likely see her again, but can't help but wonder when or if they will ever know what happened to her.
The grandparents have tried to see the twins through the Grandparents' Bill of Rights, but that hasn't happened yet. The victim's mother has filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Smith. That case continues to work its way through the court system. New information is prompting authorities in Jacksonville, Florida to reopen a nearly 10-year-old cold case. In 2008, 56-year-old Stephen Wiggins was found shot to death in a quiet West Side neighborhood. His killer has never been captured, and a motive remains a mystery. Reporter Lorena Inklin explains how a new witness could offer clues to help solve this cold case.
On the night of October 6, 2008, the corner of Colonial and Vista Avenues was the backdrop of a violent crime. The victim was Stephen Wiggins, the man Katie Wiggins called Dad.
I came the next day when we heard, and I came and we saw the blood, the shell casings over here.
She was in her early 20s when her world changed. She's still looking for answers nearly a decade later.
My love for him will never die, so I will never give up, ever.
Detective Ray Reeves of JSO agreed to meet with us about the case.
This is one piece, one of the shell casings from the caliber of gun that killed Mr. Wiggins.
Wiggins was at what was then Maddie's Landing Bar, only a few blocks away. Around 11:30 p.m., he was spotted on surveillance video at the drive-through window of this McDonald's.
We've got all of that on video. And he doesn't appear to be in distress at all.
A short time after that, a neighbor called 911 to report hearing gunshots. Minutes later, JSO found his body.
They noticed several gunshot wounds to his torso and his head.
What makes this case even more complicated is that JSO doesn't yet have a motive. Wiggins' body was found right here on the road. His car on the other side of the road, just a few feet away. The driver's side door was wide open and his car was still running. And Wiggins' wallet was still on his body.
It was not carjacking, it wasn't a robbery, and it may have been someone that he at least was familiar with.
But now, thanks to new information, Reeves tells me they found someone who might help.
We were able to develop someone that at the time was someone that needed to be talked to, maybe a person of interest.
DNA taken from the scene is now also being tested with new technology. For Katie, the new developments are welcomed news.
I just want to know what happened.
To this day, she still drives by this area once a week. She's also working on getting her master's degree in mental health counseling. She's months away from graduating, but for her, it's yet another milestone her dad will miss.
I'll also never have that chance to take a photo when I graduate with my master's this year.
If you know anything that can help police solve this or other unsolved murders, call Crime Stoppers at 866-845-TIPS. You can remain anonymous. Thank you for joining us tonight. And remember, for so many of these families, one tip could be the key to bringing them closure and putting those responsible behind bars for good.
In every crime, a story of a survivor, of someone left behind, of someone determined to solve a mystery. These are the stories of crimes that changed lives forever. This is Justice Rules.
Murder, terror, and corruption, all words synonymous with notorious mobster James Whitey Bulger. He inflicted fear in the South Boston community for decades, and just when it looked like authorities had him, he fled and spent 16 years on the run before he was caught, tried, and convicted on dozens of charges, then sentenced to spend the rest of his life in prison. But in a stunning twist of fate, in October 2018, the 89-year-old killer was found dead behind bars, beaten almost beyond recognition. Reporter Bob Ward explains how the mobster himself may have turned into the last hit.
A chilling, violent end to a murderous life.
I hope it was a brutal murder instead of a natural cause.
A force of evil who created a reign of terror, ruling the Boston underworld and orchestrating countless cold-blooded killings.
What did Whitey do to your family?
Destroyed it.
Notorious gangster James Whitey Bulger killed behind bars. From all accounts, James Whitey Bulger died a violent death at Hazleton Federal Prison in West Virginia.
For decades, Bulger ruled the streets with an iron fist. But on the inside, Bulger's status on the street just didn't matter. It appears what ultimately mattered was Bulger's reputation as an FBI informant. And that put a huge target on his back.
Sources confirm Whitey Bulger was attacked soon after he got to Hazleton, beaten to death with padlocks hidden inside socks. To understand Bulger's violent end, you need to take a look back at the violent path that led him there. For most of us, this was our first glimpse of Whitey Bulger, and it was a moment few of us ever thought we would see. James Whitey Bulger in Federal Prison Orange, escorted under heavy guard on his way to a federal court hearing in Boston. The man who was once the most feared name in Boston's underworld, now reduced to a perp walk. James Bulger was born September 3, 1929, in Dorchester. He was one of 6 children and grew up in the South Boston projects. Bulger served in the United States Air Force, receiving an honorable discharge in 1952. Then Bulger's life of crime truly began. There were arrests for bank robberies and other crimes, a stint in a federal pen where Bulger volunteered for an LSD experiment in return for early release. Bulger did time in Alcatraz. Finally, in 1965, James Bulger returned to the Boston area, joining the notorious Winter Hill Gang, known for its ruthless violence. In 1979, Bulger took over Winter Hill when indictment sent the rest of the gang's leadership to prison. Bulger and partner Stephen Flemmi set up shop in Boston at the Lancaster Street Garage, where the Massachusetts State Police shot this infamous surveillance video. Bulger and Flemmi soon became FBI informants, their handler, FBI agent John Connolly. It was a relationship that turned criminal. With Connolly's protection, Bulger and Flemmi knocked out their mafia rivals, killed anyone who got in their way, and made millions until their secret relationship was revealed. John Connolly now imprisoned for that relationship. In 1994, warned of federal indictments, Bulger skipped town, first with girlfriend Teresa Stanley. But when she got homesick, Bulger dropped her off and picked up Catherine Gregg, another girlfriend, and they vanished for 16 years.
This is an announcement by the FBI.
And then the unbelievable. The FBI made a new PR push to find Bulger, but focused on Gregg. It paid off big. A former neighbor in Santa Monica, California, now living in Iceland, called the FBI and led them to the Princess Eugenia Apartments, where the couple lived for years under the names Charles and Carol Gasco. June 22, 2011, James Whitey Bulger captured and returned to Boston for the first time in 16 years. The trial of James Bulger began in June 2013. Testimony of deep corruption, murder, and mob betrayal captivated Boston and the nation. August 12, 2012, a jury convicted Whitey Bulger on 31 counts, including his role in 11 murders. He was given 2 consecutive life sentences. Bulger's life of crime caught the attention of Hollywood. The character of Frank Costello, played by Jack Nicholson in the 2006 film The Departed, is loosely based on Whitey. And Johnny Depp took on the role as the mob boss in the film Black Mass. In late October 2018, Bulger's health was failing. He was transferred from a Florida federal prison where he was in solitary confinement to Hazleton and placed in general population with other inmates. Whitey Bulger's time at USP Hazleton was short. Bulger's killers got to him within hours after his arrival Monday night, October 29th. It all unfolded so quickly, Bulger's brother, Jackie Bulger, wasn't sure what was going on.
I have no idea. That's the first I heard of it. I heard he wasn't feeling good a while back. That's all I heard. I don't have anything to say right now.
William Bulger, James's brother, the former Massachusetts Senate president, quickly and quietly ducked into a South Boston home later that night without speaking to us. Sources tell Boston 25 News the prime suspect in the case is Freddie Gias, a hitman tied to the Springfield mob who's already serving life for his role in 2 murders. As for the second suspect, a source confirms a member of a North Shore crime family convicted for his role in the dismemberment murder of a 19-year-old woman in 1996 is being looked at. Paul J. DiCollegiero was convicted of injecting victim Aislinn Silva with pure heroin before she was strangled. Silva's body found in pieces 10 years later behind a Peabody, Massachusetts elementary school. Authorities are also looking at a possible connection to former New England mob boss Frank Salemi. Over the summer of 2018, Salemi and another man, Paul Wiedek, were convicted in Boston for a 1993 mob hit. The star witness against them, former Bulger partner Stephen Flemmi. Paul Wiedek is incarcerated at Hazleton. It was into that environment the Bureau of Prisons placed Bulger, not in segregation, but in general population. Former federal prosecutor Brad Bailey.
His papers should have been red flagged all over the place, that he should not be anywhere near or in any facility with any associates of the New England mob and or any made member or associate of La Cosa Nostra.
If Freddie Gias is convicted for the murder of Whitey Bulger, under federal guidelines, prosecutors could seek the death penalty against him.
On the streets of South Boston, news of the murder of Whitey Bulger doesn't evoke much emotion or surprise.
It is what it is, I guess. You usually get what you get coming to you, you know?
I don't wish death upon anybody, but they say karma, right? What goes around comes around.
As for family members of Bulger's victims,
I hope it was a brutal murder instead of a natural cause, and I hope all the families and everybody else are looking at this as a positive and a close for them. I mean, I don't believe in closure because that's myself, but I hope it closes the chapter in the book for a lot of the families.
the end of a long journey for justice, the end of Boston's most notorious mobster.
Bulger's death came within hours of his transfer to the notoriously violent Hazleton prison, a move that has been extensively analyzed and criticized. His attorney said in a statement, quote, he was sentenced to life in prison, but as a result of decisions by the Federal Bureau of Prisons, that sentence has been changed to the death penalty. It was the longest unsolved murder of a police officer in the country, a cold case for nearly 4 decades, until finally a break. Why it still may not bring closure for that officer's family. A young mother killed, her body found in a rolled up carpet in the woods.
We had looked at several suspects over the course of time. None of them really pan out to be anything that we can put charges on.
The new tip that could solve a 30-year-old mystery. She was known only as the Buckskin Girl because of the jacket she was wearing when her body was found.
She was a very sweet, loving girl.
Decades later, new technology finally gave her a name. The challenge now, to find her killer. For 37 years, she was known only as the Buckskin Girl because of the tasseled buckskin jacket she was wearing when her body was found. DNA recently identified her, but now investigators in Miami County, Ohio, want to identify her killer. Reporter Cheryl McHenry looks into the life and death of Marcia King.
She was loved. We didn't know where she was.
She is no longer Jane Doe.
The farm fields that blanket the Miami County countryside haven't changed much over the years.
And that's one reason we wanted to move up here. It was nice and quiet.
But every time Greg Breidenbaugh passes the ditch on Greenlee Road, he remembers what he saw there on April 24th, 1981.
I mean, she was a pretty girl. She really was.
You'd spotted this nice-looking jacket.
Right.
Then he realized someone was in it.
Well, she was laying on her right side, no shoes on, that buckskin coat and jeans, and kind of a brownish red hair.
The young woman had no identification, but the buckskin jacket she was wearing gave her a nickname and attracted a cult following.
If you go onto the internet now, I think she even has a Wikipedia page, she became known as the Buckskin Girl.
Investigators determined the Buckskin Girl had been beaten and strangled. For decades, they collected evidence and followed leads, but they needed a name.
When she was found, DNA really wasn't even on the forefront and wasn't used in law enforcement.
Science finally came through. The DNA Doe Project identified the Buckskin Girl as Marcia Sossaman King, 21 years old, from North Little Rock, Arkansas.
She was a very sweet, loving girl.
For her family, the news was bittersweet. To finally know where Marcia was, but to learn she'd been murdered. Her disappearance had weighed heavily on her father, Jack Sossaman, who died of cancer in January.
And I was glad that my husband didn't find that out when he was so sick.
Her family has been able to help investigators by shedding light on Marcia and her life before she went missing.
She reminded me of a young deer. You know, getting loose in the woods for the first time.
The summer before she vanished, Marcia had hitchhiked from Arkansas to Kansas to visit her father and stepmother. Cindy Sossaman says Jack warned his daughter about taking rides from strangers.
He said, but I only take rides from truck drivers because they're nice.
Marcia soon took off again and ended up in Illinois, where other relatives lived.
I felt she was troubled.
Her Aunt Wanda Byerly remembers a conversation she had with her son about Marcia.
But he said, she's really nice. But he said there's something heavy on her mind.
Marcia had been diagnosed with a mental illness and needed medication, but didn't like to take it. When she returned to Kansas, her father and stepmother laid down the law.
If you want to stay here, we'll help you, but you have to take your medication. And she wanted none of that, and so she disappeared.
By early 1981, Marcia seemed to be searching for spiritual meaning. The search first took her to Pittsburgh, where she wrote her mother a letter.
I want you to know that I'm happy, that I'm living with believers.
From Pittsburgh, investigators say Marcia hitchhiked to Auglaize County.
Marcia had become intrigued with the Way International, a Christian ministry headquartered here in New Knoxville. The investigation finds she had been here the month before she died, and though she had left and gone back to Arkansas, her body was found only about 40 miles south of here.
So she was in New Knoxville for a period of time, but then she was in Louisville, Kentucky, living with her family.
Marcia often stayed with an aunt in Louisville. Chief Deputy Steve Lord says that's where she was last seen alive.
Is this pretty much right now the most significant piece of evidence, the April 10th receipt? We know she was across the river from Louisville.
Yeah.
Investigators are now zeroed in on the 12 days between the April 10th receipt and April 22nd, the day they believe she was murdered. Was Marcia headed back to New Knoxville? And who was she with?
Time frame we're looking for him, but really is from Louisville back to Ohio. We're concerned with, if she's hitchhiking or if she had a relationship with persons here in Ohio.
Finding her killer may seem like a long shot after all this time.
Well, they found out who she was in 37 years.
I can tell you, if anyone can do it, these people here will do it.
The person that did this should be nervous.
On a rainy night this summer, the Buckskin Girl finally got her name back.
She is Marcia Lenore Sossaman King.
Her family came from out of state to see her headstone unveiled and to thank the people of Miami County who cared for Marcia when they could not. That's why leaving her here now gives her loved ones peace.
Her mother said that she has lived here for 37 years. This is where she should stay.
Detectives are again asking the public for information that could lead to the arrest and conviction of the person or persons responsible for her death. Anyone with information is asked to call the sheriff's tip line at 937-440-3990. A police chief slain, his killer on the loose. Police knew who they were looking for, but they just couldn't find him. The break in the case and why it may never bring closure for his family. The body of a young mother rolled up in carpet and dumped. Her daughter left an orphan. Decades later, still searching for answers, the new clues that could finally bring them justice. A Florida mother murdered, her body rolled up in a carpet and tossed out like trash. Her 11-year-old daughter left an orphan. Well, 30 years later, Tamika Jackson is still haunted by her mother's death and the fact that her killer has never been caught. She opened up to reporter Lorena Inklin about the quest to find her mother's killer.
Basically right up here in this clearing. Okay. Like right up in here.
Tamika Jackson took us out to this wooded area near Clanzell T. Brown Park near Moncrief Road. 30 years ago, her mom's body was found here, rolled up in a carpet. Jackson was 7 years old.
Do you feel like coming back helps you cope with?
Yeah, it's actually even this very moment, this very day is therapy.
During our interview, Jackson would get quiet, as she remembered all the things her mom didn't get to see.
Let me celebrate my mom's birthday with her. I don't get that. We don't get that. My siblings don't get that.
The busy mom took the bus every day from her apartment just behind Clansdale Park to the historic Seminole Club in downtown, where she was maitre d'. On March 3rd, 1987, she never made it. 3 weeks later, Jackson's older brother found his mom's body in the area known as a popular shortcut.
We believe it was blunt force trauma, but there were some other indications that there might have been some more trauma. But of course, she was in advanced stages of decomp.
These are photos of what the scene looked like in 1987. Action News Jack's Sky Vision drone shows us just how much it's changed in 30 years.
We had looked at several suspects over the course of time. None of them really panned out to be anything that we could put charges on.
Police released this sketch of a man they were looking to question. The case was featured on ProjectColdCase.org and its Facebook page. The exposure generated a tip related to this sketch.
Someone revisited the case, looked at that sketch, and thought maybe there might be a connection.
Police are vetting that tip right now. Sergeant Dan Jansen also tells me they're reprocessing some evidence, but they still need your help. Jackson knows someone watching has answers.
Did she suffer? Was it quick? Those are the things that keep me up at night. Was it quick, or did you torture her? You know, I need answers. I want to know.
She tells me she'll never lose hope that her mom's case will someday get solved.
Come clean. You'll feel much better about it. You can sleep better at night with a clear conscience. Nobody deserves that. Nobody deserves that.
A few years ago, an inmate known to Jackson and her family came forward offering a name, but police tell us there was no proof that person had anything to do with Sullivan's murder. If you know anything that can help police solve this case or any other unsolved murders, call Crime Stoppers at 866-845-TIPS. You can remain anonymous. A former police chief slain. The case cold for nearly 40 years. Investigators knew who their suspect was, but they couldn't track him down. It was the longest unsolved murder of an officer in the country, until finally a break in the case, more than 500 miles away. Reporter Rick Earl explains the case is now closed, but the chief's family is still seeking justice.
This is the first time I'm actually talking to anybody regarding any of this stuff.
Ben Adams is talking about the nearly 4-decade search for his father's killer.
I mean, I remember him taking me to wash the car on weekends, and there was, the smell of the soap.
He was just 2 years old when his dad, Saxonburg Police Chief Greg Adams, was shot and killed during a traffic stop in 1980.
Yeah, this is the area of the scuffle.
Sergeant Chris Burkbickler, who began working the case in 2005, showed us the crime scene photos. Adams had pulled over a car. A fight broke out. Adams was shot and killed. A dead man's driver's license found at the scene led police to Donald Eugene Webb, a career criminal from the Boston area with ties to the mafia. They believe he was in Saxonburg casing a jewelry store. Police found Webb's car at a hotel in Rhode Island, and their attention quickly turned to his wife Lillian, who lived outside of Boston.
She was under surveillance for years and years.
But through the years, never any sign of Donald Webb. He became one of the FBI's most wanted fugitives. In 2016, investigators searched Lillian's home and discovered a secret room with a chair and cane that locked from the inside. This exclusive photo of that room, it's the first time we've seen Webb's hiding place. Adams' family then filed a civil lawsuit against Lillian and Donald Webb, accusing them of wrongful death, and police turned up the heat.
And I explained to her that this case wasn't going to end. It was not going to stop. That I was the 15th or 16th detective to work on it in Pennsylvania, but I wouldn't be the last. I could be the last if we found Dawn.
Days later, investigators received a letter from Lillian's attorney. She had something to tell them, but she wanted immunity. Prosecutors agreed and set up a meeting with the 82-year-old woman.
When I asked the question, do you know where Dawn is? Can you lead us to Dawn? She said, yes. I said, where's Dawn? She said, I'll take you to him. He's in the backyard.
Lillian then took them out back behind a shed.
She removed a small wooden stool. She set it aside, and with her foot, she drew a line in the dirt, and she said, "He's buried there."
She told them Donald died in 1999 after a stroke. She dug a hole and buried his body in a plastic bin. She said he admitted killing Adams years ago. It was a violent fight that left Webb with a broken leg and a lifelong limp. After the shocking admission and discovery, Burke Bickler had an emotional call with Adams' former partner.
He said, "God bless you and God bless everybody up there." Extremely satisfying.
Did he ultimately pay for his crime? I mean, no. Was he brought to justice? Depends on your point of view.
Ben Adams is still frustrated that Lillian Webb was never charged, and he still has a lot of unanswered questions.
He had to get some kind of medical support. He had to get some kind of help. He had to have something.
And you don't think Lillian could have done it all on her own?
No.
After the shooting, Webb made it back to the Boston area using a fake name to get treatment for that leg injury. Meanwhile, Chief Adams' family has dropped that civil lawsuit. Lillian Webb has never spoken publicly about this case. Thank you for joining us tonight. And remember, for so many of these families, one tip could be the key to bringing them closure and putting those responsible behind bars for good.